welcome to this week's episode of the Marina Perry podcast. I am your host, as always, Marina, and I'm actually super excited. I know I say that a lot. I say I'm super excited a lot, but this week is a really special interview for me, as we'll share as we go through. But let me just tell you a little bit about our amazing guest. Abergale Bremner, aka the Limitless Woman, is a visionary artist and feminine embodiment facilitator. Abergale initiates women to reclaim their power and pleasure through artistic and emotional expression. She is the founder of I Am Woman, a pleasure movement, the Off Limits podcast, and the co-founder of Limitless Love alongside her beloved Jared Gantham. Together, they have impacted hundreds of thousands globally through somatic breathwork experiences, online and in-person workshops, and embodiment retreats in Bali and Egypt. Abergale is here to be a fierce stand for soulmate union and sacred sexuality, and believes that everybody has a soulmate love available to them. Oh my goodness, I love that bio so much. I have no words to describe how much I love it. Abby, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Do you prefer to go by Abergale or Abby? Can you let me know off the top?
I really don't mind, babe. Whatever flows. However it comes out.
Thanks for being here. And I want to start with, what is the animal that best represents your spirit based on its behavior, ways of being, or energy?
Oh, that's great. Well, the first image that came through was a black panther.
Yes.
And I feel it's the depth. I feel that it's the kind of shamanic elements of my triple kind of Scorpio nature. And also I'm very connected to cats, just sensuality, like cats and how they move and their fierceness, but also their kind of feline quality, you know, that energy. Yeah.
I love that. I see that for you, the Panther. That makes a lot of sense. And which superpower would you choose to have if you could click your fingers and have any?
Well, the first thing that's coming through is just being able to live underwater. Again, I'm really connected to the ocean and water, having a lot of water elements in my life, and just being a mermaid. I'd love to be able to live underneath the water and survive and thrive in the mystery. You know, I feel like the ocean is very mysterious and we have no idea really what's there. So yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, I can see you as a mermaid panther. It's hybrid. I'm vibing with it. I'm vibing with it. Now, oh gosh, there's so many places I know we're going to go in our chat today. And I wanted, though, you know, with what you do in the world and the stand that you are for women, for sensuality, for soulmate connection, and for embodiment, you know, of self and your own power, how did you come to be a leader in that space? And how has it also made sense on your journey? Share a little bit with our audience, you know, how we got to where we are and who Abby is in the world.
Wow, what a opening question. How did I get to where I am in the world now? Well, I tried a lot of things. I went down a lot of different paths to realize who I wasn't. And that really catapulted me into who I am, you know. And I think that for most of us, we have so many opportunities and so many different pathways to explore, and none of them are wrong. You know, they're always guiding us into who we truly are. And so, you know, for me, I for those listening, I moved to Australia 11 years ago. So I was originally from the UK. And ever since I was a little girl, my mum and dad always said that I was super restless. I had like this very restless spirit and I couldn't sit still. And there was always something that I was searching for or that I was looking for. And really that journey took me to trying multiple things when I was younger, from music to theatre to athletics to art to all these different things, never really knowing who it is I was. And there was always a lot of pressure, I think, in the schooling system to, you know, pick your subjects and identify who you are and what is it you want to be when you grow up. And I remember feeling like really pressured into, well, fuck, I don't know. I love all of these things. And I love having a bit of everything from the buffet. I don't like just having the one thing. And that was really challenging, actually, going through high school and university and, you know, private girls' school. And I remember feeling like a lot of pressure to succeed and to perform and to be the best, you know. And that journey actually led me to Australia. I moved to Australia 11 years ago, and moved away from a relationship that was really quite toxic and very unhealthy, and have had a series of those as well. A series of relationships where I didn't know how to use my voice, and I didn't really honor my worth, and wasn't very connected to myself as a woman, and attracted a lot of men, you know, that didn't really know how to treat me, and that were very toxic, and a lot of cheating and heartbreak. And that really brought me across the world to Australia. I had this sense of, I need to go to Australia, and I don't know why. Much to my parents' dismay, they were like, no, don't leave, don't go, stay. And there was me, that little inner warrior, just knowing that there was something. And so that was like 11 years ago now. And a big part of my journey in Australia was you, Marina, you know, and pure health clubs, and entering into the health and fitness, you know, world and the wellness industry. And really, when I first came to Australia, I was experiencing quite a lot of, you know, depression and anxiety from emotions in the past that I hadn't allowed myself to feel, that I hadn't actually alchemized and expressed. So this led to, you know, emotional eating and depression, and feeling very isolated. And then I found Pure, which I know is one of your passion projects. And, you know, you really opened the door for me to a lot of personal development and mindset and health. But inside there was still like a lot of angst inside of me. You know, there were still emotions that I wasn't able to access myself. And I was then, you know, developing unhealthy relationships with food and exercise, and, you know, really, I would say at that point, like, kind of punishing my body at a time, you know, which I can see can happen sometimes in, you know, the fitness industry, as you would be well aware of. And so, yeah, I was trying to kind of define myself on the external, and seeking externally for all of these things to fill that sense of loneliness and that void that was inside. And since then, you know, since getting my residency and my citizenship here in this beautiful country, there's been so many openings. And I mean, I'm sure you'll want to dive into something else, but yeah, there's been just so much growth since being in Australia. And obviously meeting Jared, meeting my beloved, and the growth and the exponential just change from meeting my soulmate and him reflecting all these parts back to me as well, and diving into embodiment, diving into my pleasure, diving into my body's wisdom. I really feel has been the biggest thing, is going deeper and deeper inside. And there's been numerous ways that I've done that, and I'm sure we'll continue on from there.
And for those listening, you know, I mean, I'm grateful that we have a history, and, you know, I feel very blessed that that Pure and that vehicle, because it is its own entity, as you know, with businesses, they breathe their own life force, they have their own purpose and mission. And it really warms my heart, actually, that Pure served you to call Australia home. Like, that's one of the things. I've had that company 20 years, and just as a segue or a side note here for people who are entrepreneurs and do create things, the ripple effect of beyond what you do, you know, we now have marriages from people who met at Pure, and babies from people who met at Pure. And for me, you being able to call Australia home and be free to stay here, that I'm so, it gives me chills through Pure's, you know, love and your service to it, because you are always such an amazing piece and part of that journey for Pure. But what I really wanted to dive into today is I watched you in that, particularly towards the end of the time you were at Pure, in a struggle. I watched you in a relationship where, and I say this, and I actually know that you'll be okay that I say this, but I say it because this is the language that a lot of people use. It's like, it's good, and he's a good person, and these friends are good people, and I really love them, when you said, you still struggled with those feelings, and I'm using, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see my hands, and I'm probably not being very articulate, but it's that, and we can all relate to it, that sense of, is there more? There must be more, because although this is good, and although in a mindset frame I should be really happy with this, I'm fucking not. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of energy. And I know we had a few conversations towards the end of your time at Pure, and I remember them well, and I always watch with curiosity what you do next, and what you did next eventually, because there were steps and stages. And I'd love to unpack that, because the precipice of your real transformation, I'd love you to share, maybe so you can help people who are at that stage. But I saw you really take a stand for your truth from a distance and really become the you that I feel that you're here to be, and into the embodiment of that. And therefore you called in, Jared, who's your soulmate. But I'm blessed in my life to be surrounded by many people who create change. I'm a big believer that change is possible. Growth is really our only purpose. More experience of ourselves, the world, the everything. And you are such a beautiful representation of that. So if you wouldn't mind being really raw and authentic with the listeners around when you're at that stage in your life where things are good, but they're not great, or they don't feel aligned, or there's an inner call or an inner scream. Sometimes it's been that for me. It's an inner scream. How did you extract yourself from a life that was pretty well set up and pretty tightly knit, with really kind of good friends and a good environment, and put yourself in a completely different place to be a completely different version of Abby? Because would you say that that's essentially what you did do? You kind of took yourself out of one container and put yourself in another container that allowed you to flourish in completely different ways that previous container, I don't think, would have allowed. Would you agree with that? And if not,
correct. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, our environment, shapes our reality. And I'm sure you've mentioned many times on here, but we are the sum of the people that we spend time with, the 5 people. So when you look around at your current environment, are they really reflecting who you believe at your core that you are? And do they embody the qualities? Do they embody the lifestyle that you really want to live ultimately? And I started to look around at my life, and although I was grateful for what had been provided and what I was experiencing, there was, as you said, like a deep knowing and an irritation and a discomfort in knowing that there's more. There's more to what I'm allowing myself to see right now. And I started to get outside of my little box and get outside of my comfort zone by, investing in different experiences, investing in workshops, looking at other people that were living the lifestyle that I aspired to live, and, receiving their teachings, allowing myself to really look at my own beliefs and my own perception of myself and my reality, and started to rewire some of those pathways in my mind. Because I think the mind is the place that I really started. It's like, okay, my mindset has really got to shift. And I know you're a big believer in this as well, the work that you do. So yeah, it was all about rewiring my belief system and what I felt I was worthy of, and starting to open that up. So the first thing I think is really looking at your perceptions and your mindset and taking ownership of that, and actually investing time and energy and compassion for yourself to realize, okay, I'm not where I want to be. Where do I want to be? Who's embodying what I feel I'm here to embody, or what I want to embody in my life? And the other thing was like a sense of curiosity. I'm always curious. I'm a curious, magical, woman, you know, I have this inner child that just dreams up her reality all the time. And I think I'm really grateful that I kind of carried that piece through my life, and I've invested more time and more energy into my imagination now. And I think for a lot of us, like, we lose that sense of wonderment, we lose that sense of curiosity and awe as we become these really serious, like, adults that are so kind of caged in by what society deems is appropriate. And for me, my work is constantly about activating that aliveness, you know, really bringing that magic to my life and everything that I do, and staying curious. Now, I still don't have all the answers. I'm always open to hearing from different people, learning new perspectives, trying new things. And yeah, that's really kept me opening these doors and going into the labyrinth, you know, of life.
Yes. And I love that you shared earlier, and you're reiterating, I feel here as well, the importance of being prepared to go down the wrong or the dead end, because we don't know until we know, and we don't know what we don't know unless we go. And as you said too, I love, and for anyone listening, you know, what Abby's saying is really feel into, if you were brave enough to really dream the dream, what would it be? And then look in the world. If there's even one person who has that in the way that you envision it, it's possible. Allow them to be a permission slip for you, and just follow the crumbs, right? So you've done that. And then now you run retreats and you run embodiment. And you tell me about, particularly, I know you do a lot of breath work and embodiment practices, and Egypt and Bali. Like, what has been the most transformative or deepening, do you think, of all of the different elements for you personally that you really feel cracked you into this deepened, more embodied version of Abergale?
Yeah, amazing. So as I said, I started off on the journey of mindset, and I feel it's so important to do that, to invest in your mind. And then I kind of got to a certain place with my mind, and I was coming up against some different blocks, and I realized that actually what I needed to do next was dive into the wisdom of my body, like to come down from the thinking mind, the intellectual mind, and sink into the core of our emotional being. And I realized at that point that I had been really terrified of feeling my emotions, and actually revisiting different experiences from the past. And the truth is, no matter where you go, I flew the other side of the world to Australia, like, all of those emotions that were unprocessed, or feelings or traumas, came with me, you know, and they were showing up. And even though the mind was starting to be clear and my body was still housing these energies. And so for me, one of the biggest tools, and we still practice it all the time, is breath work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, breath is the bridge to the body. And the type of breath work that we do is a bit different than the yogic breathing, because there's lots of different breath work types in yoga, the pranayamic breathings, and all the different styles, which are amazing, like short kind of techniques to get your mind in gear and get you focused and give you clarity and start to build that chi and energy. But the breath work that Jared and I stumbled across, and that we now facilitate in our experiences, is an alchemical breath work. It's a somatic breath work. So it's where we breathe for longer periods of time in a contained and safe environment. And we have a different technique that we now use. And essentially what it does is it brings you so present into your body. It really takes you from the thinking mind into the feeling body. And then anything that, you know, maybe you've suppressed or that you haven't given yourself permission to feel is then welcomed and celebrated and honored and felt. And essentially, when we feel these emotions from the past, this is a lot about Joe Dispenza's work, you know, about quantum physics as well. And there's so much work on our emotions and science around, you know, if we suppress emotions in the body, it leads to diseases. And I feel like, you know, corona, which is a whole nother conversation, which we're not going to go into, but is, you know, I believe is, you know, a result of us not feeling our emotions. And I believe all health problems and diseases are blockages and disconnects from our emotions in the body. That's just my truth. That's how I perceive things. So yeah, the breath helps us to alchemize these emotions and essentially gives us our life back, gives us our freedom back, gives us our vitality back, gives us our energy back, and, you know, opens up infinite possibilities. Like, the wisdom of the body is limitless. And so breath work for me has helped me to reclaim my power as a woman, to open my heart, to notice when I'm in an environment, you know, even the other day at an event where there's a lot of people and I'm so in tune now with my body, I can feel when I'm starting to shut off or my heart's starting to close off or I feel anxious. And so for me, it's a matter of I can be in this environment and feel very anxious and pretend to have these conversations with everyone that are, oh, how are you? I'm great. I'm amazing. How are you doing? Or I can take responsibility and go outside and do 5 to 10 minutes of breath work and actually release that anxiety so I can come back into presence and keep my heart open. So breath work has been a really powerful tool that is just phenomenal. And then for me, it's all around sensuality and embodiment and pleasure as well, which is a whole nother, you know, route. And again, it's all about opening the body and feeling your emotions
Yeah,
and expressing them.
we
Yeah.
will dive deeper into that, and I second you and have mentioned this many times on the podcast. And I think I have a feeling my certification in breathwork, we may have trained at the same place, but I don't know. I think you did your training with Soma. Someone said that you had, but
Yeah, we've done a couple. We've done Soma more recently, but before then we did a different somatic biodynamic breath work, which
yes,
is more around trauma release. So
yes.
they're different, but they're both amazing. Yeah.
Well, yes, yes. Well, yes, and I agree though, like even before I'd done my certification, I've always said that of all the journeys that I've had on different experiences, whether it's plant medicines or deep meditations or different therapies, breath work has been the one that has been the most potent and transformative. And what I love about it, as you just so aptly said, is breath is life. I mean, it's the first breath that we take that says we're here, and it's the last breath that we take that says we're not in this dimension. And so to be able to have that as your only tool to access more and more of life, I think is a kind of makes A, common sense, but B, is also really beautiful in its simplicity. Um, and and I think whatever tool gets you there is the way, right? And I do encourage people to try breath work. And I also support what you're saying there, Abby, about the mindset, because I agree with you. You know, I've always laughed, why do we want to teach mindfulness? Mindfulness, we don't want to be more full of the mind. But as we've, I think, as a culture and as a society, focus more on this indoctrinated education, we've shut off the body and come right into this focus on the, you know, the cortex of the brain, if you will, where we're just thinking machines. And we do sometimes need to move through the mind to find the trapdoor back to the rest of us. So it isn't that mindset is the most important place to start. It's because the mind is what's inhibiting our ability, isn't it, to go there? Because we've been told, don't go there, it's not safe, and we'll avoid what's not safe. But as we survive and code and recode and rewire those experiences, more and more of life opens up. And so tell me a little bit about your journey to Egypt and how, because I know you've run retreats there. And I mean, you run retreats in Bali, but lots of us do. And Egypt is a whole different kettle of fish. And I would one day love to journey with you to Egypt. So can you tell us a little bit about what called you to Egypt and if that had any part in your pleasure journey or this aspect of the feminine embodiment that I know you're so activated in?
Yes. Oh, well, first of all, I just love sacred portal work. And that's what I feel, you know, these sites like Bali, France, Hawaii, Ireland, New Zealand, Egypt, they're sacred sites in on the planet. And they have certain grids underneath the earth that makes their energetic frequency very potent. So when you go there, like when you go to Bali or when you go to Egypt, you feel more if you're open to receiving the energy of the land. So Egypt is in itself, I mean, with just by going to the land and being in the pyramids and being in the temples, you will start to feel more things. And for a lot of us, we are multidimensional beings. You know, we can see and hear and taste, and we have these different sensory perceptions and activations that are available to us. Like, it's not just what we see in the 3D, right? There's way beyond that, and I'm not going to go into that right now. But I believe that we are all shamanic if we choose to be. And so with Egypt, really that energy came alive for me when Jared and I collided. So when our souls found each other on this planet at this time, we started to have a lot of experiences that were very connected to Egypt and the deities of Egypt, like Queen Isis and the different gods, and the Neturu is what they're called. And so essentially when we were making love and when we were connecting, we would have visions of being in Egypt, in the temples, making love. And there was a lot of different things that started to happen, and we started to connect to different energies. So we're talking about sex magic now, which is again another topic in itself. So yeah, we knew that when we came together, there was a strong connection to the land there, and we knew that we were going to go back at some point. And I remember when Jared and I first met, it was actually at the bridge, which you were at. But I was in a previous relationship then, and he was actually pursuing another girl at the workshop. It wasn't until later that we connected, but when we were initially chatting on Skype, or not even Skype, on FaceTime, I should say, I remember the first time he wanted to show me his altar, and he wanted to show me this ankh that he had picked up from a shop, an Egyptian shop. And for some reason, the FaceTime wouldn't work, and it kept disconnecting, it wouldn't connect. And so he read me a passage from the Alchemize of Queen Isis, this book that he had. And I just remember when he read the words, it was like an uncontrollable, just heart awakening. There was so much grief. My heart just opened, and I was just crying for days after that. You know, just, I didn't even know. It was an overwhelming experience of grief and longing and love, and just so overwhelming for my system. I'd never experienced grief like that until that moment. And then, yeah, I mean, since then, we've known that we needed to go back there. And then we went and visited a couple of years ago. And I mean, the land speaks for itself. Every temple has an energetic signature, and everyone is very different. And it was interesting because when we were there, you know, you can do the normal tours, and there was a lot of people just kind of, you know, going about their normal, you know, business and having their tours. And we were kind of listening to what the guides were saying, and they were talking about mummies and, you know, death and a lot about that. But then our tour was completely different. We were talking about sexuality and how the pyramids were used for sex magic and ritual, and, you know, how much pleasure they would experience and then connect in that way. So yeah, and now we facilitate retreats there. Well, we don't right now due to the current climate of the world. The plan is to be going back there very soon.
Yes. All right. That's awesome. Now I want to pause and just for those who are listening, who some of this language may be new to them, can you explain, when you say that you believe that we're all shamanic, your use of that word, what does that mean to you, and what might the listener take away from that?
Yeah. So in terms of shamanic, I mean that we are all connected to this planet, to the earth, in so many different ways. So some of us are very, very sensitive. You know, we're very sensitive to our environment, and we feel a lot of different sensations and vibrations and feelings. And because we haven't had a safe container, or maybe our parents didn't know about how to feel emotions or adjust to our sensitivity, and because of those in our environment, maybe our friends, family members also aren't connected in that way, or haven't been guided to, we shut down that capacity to feel. And my belief is that we have multiple. So for me, I'm very kinesthetic, and some people are visual. Like, you know, when you drop into a meditation, or perhaps you've had a dream, or you've been making love, or you've been in the bath, and something will pop into your prefrontal cortex, or in your third eye, as I like to say, like a vision, an image, and you might be like, oh, that's really random. What was that? I believe that this is the shamanic sense, you know, and especially women, you know, when we look back thousands and thousands of years ago to the tribe days where we were all living in tribes, and we were in the jungles, and, you know, women were shamans, women were medicine women, and we connected to the earth. We could look at the moon and say when the best harvest was going to be for the tribe, and we would come together and we would bleed together when our menstrual cycle, you know, we would bleed on the earth together. And so when I say shaman, I believe that every male and every woman, and I'm particularly speaking to women right now, we have these capacities, we have these senses, we have these magical abilities that have been shut down, and that have, due to our toxic environment, due to, you know, fear controlling in the media, and due to what our focus and attention isn't on that. So for a lot of us, they're not fully awakened.
Yes.
And it's not everyone's journey to become, you know, a shaman. So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, this bitch is crazy, this is not for me, that's cool, that's awesome, fully respect that. But also there will be some women that listen to this and they're like, wow, okay, yeah, I've started to feel these things. I've started to hear different things. I've started to experience life in a way that I don't understand. And they feel a little bit confused and maybe lost in that. And that was me. So reach out to someone that can support you with that, or reach out to me as well if you feel inclined to.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll link to everything of yours in the show notes so people can do that. And I agree. I concur 100%. I believe that we all have the capacity for the senses beyond those which we think we have. But I also do believe that we can completely shut them down and shut them off unconsciously or consciously. And I love what you said there, that it is our toxic environment. You know, we are drinking fluoride, we're eating foods that are processed, genetically modified. We have toxic metals in our system. Like we're a vessel inside of vessels, right? And that soup is only as communicative to a clear vessel as clear as our vessel is. And if our thoughts are very much, it's not possible, well, we'll create our reality. So I love what you're saying there. And I wanted to know though, beyond obviously low tox living and switching off mainstream media, which everyone hears me say all the time. I haven't watched in probably now it'll be 9 years, I think, which sometimes leaves me a little out of a loop, and I'm okay with that. What would you suggest if someone has, because I don't know if you've ever had this experience, Abby, but I certainly have, where I've had stages in my life where my clairaudience is so strong, like it's almost like constant conversation, as if someone's in a room with me. And then, or I've had visions that are just so clear, like you say, it's like it's right in front of you, like a picture book. Or your sensations are so clear as a channel. And then life happens, people come, go, and it's like it's all dulled down again. And even though you may want it, you know, if you know what I'm saying, it's like, come back, magic, come back. So for those people who maybe have been through that, beyond clean living and you know, maybe keeping yourself clear of toxic thoughts, would you suggest things like breathwork and embodiment practices? Like, what would be your go-tos to reopen those channels if people want to, if they want to open those channels? What's your advice?
I love this question. And the things you've already touched on are really important. First of all, like what you're talking about, food, mindset, eradicating that toxicity from your current nutrition is really, really important, and what you're putting in your body. So that is massively important. And also, I would say just actually getting out and connecting with nature. Actually getting out, away from the city, away from your current environment, those people that maybe don't believe in what you believe in, and spending some time either with other women that are connected to nature, or that enjoy the mystery, or that embody some of that energy, that you're kind of like, I want a little bit more of that, what they've got. seek them out and spend time with them,
Mm-hmm.
women activate each other without doing anything else. When you are around a group of women that embody their pleasure, that embody their magnetism, that embody their radiance, that believe they're connected to the earth, that believe that they are, you know, a woman of God and divinity, if you're just around them, naturally things are going to start to activate. Like, we activate each other. Women are so incredibly powerful in that way. So getting out, so I say getting out into nature, being still in nature, and just breathing and starting to really just let go of the mind, let go of all your responsibilities, letting go of all of that, you know, that chaos, getting still, getting quiet, getting out into nature, and then connecting with other beings that are already doing this.
Yeah.
Other women.
I think that's such good advice. And I back that up 100%. And science shows that when we are in the force field of each other, because coherence is a real reality. And this is why, as you very aptly mentioned right at the beginning, we're the sum of the five people. So if those five people that we're most around a low vibration, closed off energy, it's very difficult to open up to your fullest expression. It's not impossible, but it's more challenging. And, you know, people who see auras, for instance, or have only at times seen auras, if you go around people who are very skilled at seeing auras, science shows that your auric ability opens up because you're in coherence with their frequency, which is why, you know, often people do seek out the teachers and the leaders that they do, because their soul is actually seeking, isn't it? That it's like the soul is calling to that resonance they know they have within them. So going into a container to be near it is almost like an energetic permission slip to access it for yourself. I think that's such good advice, Abby. And I want to dive in because it's been in the back of my mind, and I know that the listener heard you say it and is like, what, Marina? You better make sure you go back and ask questions about that. So sex magic. Let's talk about sex magic, and let's talk about your and Jared's relationship. And particularly, you know, in your bio, you mentioned that you believe everyone has a soulmate. And I want to unpack soulmate. I want to unpack sacred sexuality and sex magic. So you decide where we need to start. But I just want to share a little story, because you did mention that you and Jared met at a course that I was also at. And I then spent more time with Jared in a subsequent course, which you weren't at, and got to know him really well. And I was like, this guy is freaking awesome. And I said to him, and this is where I get to be right, I'm going to full own my rightness. I said to him, mate, you need to do male embodiment. You need to show men to be a permission slip. Men need to be guided, all these things. And at the time he was in health and thinking he wasn't in health. He was thinking he needs to be health because he's such a physical, fine specimen around it. And I was like, no, this is where you need to go. And I really loved Jared, like straight off the bat, we hit it off. And then a little bit later, like you mentioned, I could see both of you on social media separately posting stories, and you're maybe both in the forest or something. I was like, I think something's going on here. And then, of course, when it came out, I was like, this is just a match made in heaven. Knowing you both separately, obviously you more than Jared, but yes. So tell us about your union, how you feel it's a soulmate connection, maybe. Then talk about sacred sexuality and maybe there's sex magic. Lighten us up. Tell us about that. Yeah. Anywhere you want to go, just unfold those three things for us.
Wow, babe. I feel like this could be, yeah, a trio of episodes. There's so much juice when we talk about sexuality and we start talking about soulmates and all the pieces, but I'll just open and see what wants to come through right now. So, as I said in my bio, I really believe that everybody has a soulmate union available to them on the planet. And that has really anchored in the past year. I believe that we are designed to have a soulmate and to have one soulmate. That is.
So I'm going to pause there, if you don't mind, because I would love to dive into this, because I did actually see a post of yours recently on social media, and just your comment there reminded me about in the last year. And so you're saying, and this is, I love conversations like this, so let's just get real. On a biological level, a lot of people would argue that we're actually not wired for monogamy or a committed serial one-personness, and that the nuclear system, or the container, or the conditioning, if you will, of our society is what's pushed us into these one relationships. So when you talk about soulmate relationship and there being one, and that we really need to find that one, what is the soul, what makes it a soulmate relationship, number one? And number two, why do you believe that it's important for us to find that and journey with it?
Okay, so I might get a bit woo-woo here, but it's just how.
We're good with the woo, babe. Go for it.
So I believe in God. I believe that God is an entity of love and essentially is love and is the creator of all living things on this planet. Your connection to God may vary. You may have different belief systems and it's all welcome, right? But I believe in God. I believe that God created a soul. When we incarnate on this planet, when we arrive on this planet, we split into two parts. This is my belief, okay? So we split into two parts, and those two parts can either be masculine and feminine, they can be feminine and feminine, or they can be masculine and masculine. And there's a variety of dynamics that can happen. If there's a feminine soul that's like overtly feminine, has a lot of feminine qualities, and then that splits, and there's going to be two feminine, a partnership of two women. And you'll see this like in the reflection of nature, like there is an infinite variety of the masculine and the feminine dynamics. If you look at trees and plants and wildlife, it is limitless. So some of us will feel more creative and feel more musical and more artistic, and some of us might feel more athletic and more, strong or whatever. So I believe that at our incarnation on this planet, that the two parts of the soul split, and that's what happened with Jared and I. I was placed in the UK and he was in Australia. And this can be any part of the world. Your soulmate could be in fucking China or Iceland or India or the UK, wherever. The journey is then to find the other part of your soul. That is the journey. And on this planet, there is so many different belief systems around everything, like around food, around how you move your body, around being in relationships. And let's talk about relating right now. There's a lot of different relationship dynamics that are openly explored, spoken about, open relating. You've got all different types of open relating and polyamorous relating. And we've explored that and we've investigated and we've done a lot of our own exploration and research in those arenas. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's the wrong pathway. But what I believe is that is a distraction from actually being with your soulmate and actually the intimacy and the depth and the vulnerability and the limitlessness that can be experienced when you're met by the other part of you, when you're met by the other side of you. And so my experience with Jared has been just this. There has been so much that I have faced off with since meeting Jared. It has not been all fucking sunshine and Hollywood movies and fairy tale love. Yes, there is cosmic orgasms, there's sex magic, there is the most bliss I've ever felt, there's the most abundance I've ever experienced, there's the most opportunities that have come in. But also he has mirrored and allowed me to access all of the past emotions that I didn't feel safe to experience, wasn't allowing myself to experience. And what we do is we transmute that and we feel that and we release that through pleasure. We release that through sex magic. So I believe that, yeah, everyone has a soulmate, but it's a courageous path. It's a courageous path to choose a beloved, to choose someone every single day, to choose love, essentially is what we're talking about. Universal love, to choose love every single day is confronting for a lot of us, because we live in a world where we are constantly looking for evidence that love doesn't exist, and we're creating separation all the time because we've been indoctrinated by literally everything that we consume, social media, food, everything. So I fundamentally believe that there's a lot of distraction on the planet. There's a lot of different distractions that get people lost, and people are confused and they feel they don't know who they are. But I found who I am through my own personal commitment to growth and to God and to feeling my emotions. I believe that the moment that we are not feeling our emotions or are not in truth with our emotional experience. We're disconnected. We're disconnected from the creator. We're disconnected from love, right? So it's choosing to be truthful with your experience in every single moment, and that connects you. And so when it comes to soulmate union, that's really what Jared and I are deeply committed to. We hold space for our emotional experience. We go into ourselves, we take full responsibility for our own emotions, and then we come to each other and we transmute that as well through our bodies, through sex magic and through pleasure.
Yes. So for someone listening, and I agree with you, I believe that the right all relationships are going to have the greatest opportunity for growth because of the mirror, because we are in a relating world. If we weren't, we'd just be, well, even if we were stars in the galaxy, we're still relating to other stars, shining on them. So we can't not relate. And that the right relationships hold up the sharpest, sometimes most painful mirrors. But in that awareness of self, we return to self. And in that return to self, we're safer with self. And that's the wholeness that we're seeking. That's the love that we're seeking. And that's seeking us. So when you talk about to make this a bit tangible for people, and I love that you're sharing that, it gets real and raw, and it's not all sunshines and rainbows in a really open-hearted soulmate relationship. So when you fight and you say you take responsibility for yourselves, and then you come together and through sex magic you release it, what does that mean? So let's make it every day. So you have a fight or a misunderstanding, there's projection, you're kind of calling each other out on stuff, and you're feeling wounded in whatever ways you feel wounded. Do you then intentionally take time apart to own, when you say take responsibility, so to take time for yourself, to take accountability for, and then do you come together and communicate, or do you just come together and make love? Like, what does that look like?
Great question. Well, I wish I could give you like a straightforward kind of cookie cutter.
The steps, please. 1, 2, 3. The 4-step process. No.
Yeah, I mean, it looks different every single time.
Yes.
We are animals, essentially at heart. Like, we are wild animals, and every time it looks different. So sometimes we might come together, and the more that I'm also embodying my truth and my power, that can often be very triggering for the masculine. The more that he shines back his integrity and his purity and his clarity and his purpose, that can be very triggering for me. Like, we're constantly really mirroring back to each other in our relationship what's happening collectively. And it's not just what happens in our relationship. Our relationship is a micro of the macro. So what's happening with Jared and I is happening with every relationship on the planet, is happening within the masculine and the feminine expressions of all of us, because we all have these energies inside of us. And our job, I believe, is to come into that inner union, to actually balance the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine energies and come into harmony within ourselves. But of course, along that journey, there is going to be different activations that happen in the system and different traumas and emotions. So when Jared and I get into that experience, we have a couple of things. Either we will have a timeout and we'll actually go, yes, babe, thank you for this gold. I'm going to go and experience this and be with this and transmute it. That's what we'll do. We'll separate, like you said, and spend time apart and actually feel what's for us and breathe into that, or shake our bodies, or dance, or spend some time on the beach and in the ocean and disconnecting. And then once we've actually had time to reflect, because obviously when you're in a confrontation or when you're in a disagreement, lots of emotions and hormones get triggered and the brain gets flooded with all the different emotions. And it's challenging to come to an equilibrium in that moment. Not always can you do that. Sometimes you need that time and space to actually be with, okay, what's mine to own here? What can I take responsibility for here? What part of what Jared is saying is true? Part of what he's reflecting back to me, if I live in a holographic environment and everything is, my law of attraction has manifested this experience to me, for me, what can I own in this? What's mine to own? And then what's mine not to own? Like, where is my truth being, disowned here, or where am I not owning my truth here? And really, for me, I need to remove myself, shake my body, move through the emotion, take myself to the beach, and I'll journal and I'll write it down. Then we come back together and we come into a conversation and we say, you know, when you said this, babe, I actually made it mean this, or this is how I experienced it for me in my body when you said this. And then we'll give each other space and actually listen and come back. And our intention is to then come back to love. And often we'll then make love, because for most of the time, it's not about who's right. And that's what gets triggered for the masculine and the feminine. It's like we both want to be right. And you can get caught in this loop of just like, well, this is what you did and this is what you did. And instead of that, what we do is we then go and take it into lovemaking. And sometimes that will happen at the start and we'll be able to just go into that. And other times we'll need the space. So moving the energy through our bodies, actually getting out of the intellect and the dialogue and actually being in the intimacy, because at the core of both of us in those moments, all we want is to be loved. All we want is to be seen and to be heard and to be felt.
Yes.
So taking that into a lovemaking experience, and that's not with a goal of orgasm. You know, we're taking out the goal of, oh, well, we've got to have an orgasm in this experience, which puts pressure, you know, on the situation, has expectation. Instead, we're entering this love appointment or this sex magic experience, and we are setting the intention that we're going to come back to love, however that wants to happen. And I mean, this has been our work for the past 3 years in our relationship, is feeling safe to move through those emotions with each other. Sometimes that's rage for me. Sometimes we're in an experience where, you know, it's sex magic and I'm moving through anger in my body. But if I allow that energy to flow through and he allows that to happen, then there's passion on the other side underneath that anger and that emotion. There's then passion, then we're able to meet each other in the passion. And sometimes for him, there might be a sense of deep grief or sadness that I haven't heard him, or that, you know, he hasn't been understood. And if I can give him the safety and the permission to actually access that grief, and then it might look like I'm holding him for 45 minutes and we're just together in that. You know, it's taking out the pressure of, oh, I think when we talk about sex, because we've been so conditioned on how even sex looks like, how sex is experienced and how it's felt in the body, there's just all these different belief systems around it, you know.
Yes. I love what you're sharing there, and I love the phrase that you said a couple times, you know, that it's in the sex magic, it's just a commitment to return to love. And I think, yes, I agree with you. We are, again, conditioned to believe that sex magic would be like movie rock star sex, you know, wowzers, 10 orgasms or whatever it might, you know, your mind might conceive of there. And as a result, so much pressure and therefore no presence, you know, and without that presence, you can't really have the magic, can you? So I love what you're sharing, and the fact that really it's not necessarily, it may not even be penetrative. When you're talking about sex magic, it might just be two open hearts bleeding, but with love on each other until they're unified again.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're most of us are terrified to be in that vulnerability. And still for me, you know, it's a choosing and meeting that resistance. You know, last year I went through a period where I was convinced, and my ego had convinced me that Jared wasn't my soulmate and that we were meant to open our container to other people to come in. And I didn't want to be intimate with him. I didn't have any desire. I was like, I think we're done. You know, I don't know how to meet you. And, you know, he's a being that has needs and wants to be intimate and experience that. So that was hurting him, my inability to kind of meet him. So yeah, it got to this point where it was almost like, okay, well, what do we do from here? And initially I had told myself that I needed a period of celibacy. You know, I needed actually to step away from sexual connection and really feel what was here. But But the funny thing was, when I actually sunk deeper into it, it was actually the opposite that I needed. It was I needed to meet the resistance, and I needed to go into the pleasure and actually make a commitment that for 30 days, every day, that we were going to, and I was going to experience an orgasm with him.
Mm.
And that brought up so much resistance in my system. But what was happening was there was a deeper level of fear of the intimacy that was actually being triggered.
Mm.
I needed to lean into that instead of back away, you know. And in that moment, I could have chose to exit the relationship, and then limitless love and all the magic that we experience with all the community and all of the beauty that is here, you know, could be complete. And maybe that's one reality and that's one choice. But my soul knows that I'm here for soulmate union, and my soul knows that this is the truth of soulmate union. And what we see as soulmates, or what we believe is soulmates, again, might be different and might be warped. And really, it's being in the truth of love, being in love in every moment. And love is infinite, and it can be sometimes, like I said, deeply emotional, and sometimes it's your little girl that needs to be held, or his little boy that needs to be held, and sometimes it's wild fucking sex. I mean, yesterday, for example, just pop this in here, yesterday on our sacred Sundays, which we do every Sunday, we commit to this because yeah, it's important to us. We went down to Broken Head Beach, and I was feeling like, okay, babe, I feel like you get to channel more of your primal energy. So let's do an exercise where you can unlock that and feel that. And for me to feel safe with him to be in that energy as well. So we started, like, I was guiding him through a practice where he was slamming rocks down, like picking up really big rocks and slamming them down. And I noticed how I was feeling in my body while he was doing that. And there was a part of me that was scared. And then there was a part of me that started to get turned on. And then I started to judge myself. And then I was like, oh, wow. And then he was scared because he could feel that I was scared. And then, so we were just having this dialogue backwards and forwards whilst he was in this experience of how we were both feeling with him being in this energy. And so we did this beautiful rock throwing, and then we went down to this part of the beach, secluded part of the beach, and then we ended up like making love on the rocks in the ocean, like together in the middle of the day. But because we channeled that power and we'd allowed that primal energy for him to come through and be released, it then turned into passion and wildness, and we made love, and it was fucking great. But I wonder how many, and I know for myself, I'm only now in this relationship allowing the totality of his expression and my expression to be honored and to be felt and seen.
Yeah. So it sounds like, you know, a really open communication is a foundational part of sex magic and soulmate union. And I want to pause there, Abby, and just come back because for the listener too, I feel like this moment where you said earlier about last year and you had convinced yourself, you said you convinced yourself that you had the belief that that you weren't soulmates and that maybe you're at the end of your relationship. And anyone listening, I mean, it doesn't have to be about soulmate relationship. It could be about the career, you know, or the relationship, or you know, any aspect. You know, you convinced yourself that it's something, and then it's that precipice again, like we started the conversation with, like that change. I mean, leaving would have been a massive change, right? So you're capable of massive change, and yet in this instance you said that you went deeper and then you realized. So for people who are maybe less skilled in this work or have less experience, if they're going, is my partner for me? Or if they're going, I really don't love this job and I'm feeling like I can't get lit up by it, you know, maybe I need to just leave the job. And of course, I'm not saying that they need to stay. Like, the point is not that your decision was right or that they need to have the same decision. What I suppose I'm trying to access for myself and for the listeners is this reflection from you around, even though you might think something and you have evidence to back it up, I can't get turned on by him, I'm not drawn to him, I'm thinking about other people, whatever all the evidence was that had you have this belief or this experience, what was your tool then? Was it the same as before when we talked about accessing, more of our deepening and our shamanic energy, what brought you into a deeper awareness that it was the resistance? Like, you had the resistance that was saying run, which, I so often say, follow the resistance down. It's the red flag to access more light. But what did you actually do on a tangible level? What would you say to someone listening if they're like, I don't know, Abby, I don't know which way to go, but I feel like it's this, part of me is not sure. What would be your advice for them? Yeah, what do you feel called to say to them in that moment to know for sure? How do we know for sure, or do we never know for sure?
Yeah, this is great. Well, first, I would communicate. I would express what I'm actually feeling. That's what I had to do with Jared. Instead of me, being in this environment or maybe having sex with him when I wasn't feeling desire, I didn't feel that energy. Instead of me just carrying on with that or carrying on with the job or whatever it is, first you've got to get really honest with yourself and then actually communicate. So the most confronting thing sometimes is for us to speak the truth of what we're actually experiencing, but the truth sets us free. And often we create a story that if we speak our truth or we share what we're actually experiencing, that they're going to run, or that the job will be taken away, or that whatever the story is that we're running in our head. And my story was, if I speak that truth to Jared, then he's going to run, he's going to leave, or he's going to find someone else. But the truth is, when we actually are in truth and we're speaking that to whoever is involved in that situation, whether it's your boss, your partner, your friend, whenever you are in truth, actually what happens is you come closer together. There's actually an energetic drawing closer rather than a separation. When you're not in truth, when one of you is feeling, experiencing something and the other is not, when you're not in truth, there's actually a disconnection that is happening energetically. And so the first thing would be to actually communicate to whoever is involved the truth of what you're feeling, and actually let that open a conversation. As well as that is, like I mentioned earlier, taking some time to yourself, connect to nature, remove yourself from the environment, any distractions, put your phone down. If you've got a girls' date night booked in and you're like, oh, I just say to the girls, you can't be there. Really prioritize your energy and how you're feeling, and remove yourself and spend some time in stillness or in nature, and allow yourself to really just give yourself the space to actually allow whatever is there to reveal itself, deeper. Because often when we're just in our environment, we're on our phones, we're on our laptops, we're at work, we're servicing our children or our families, we're so busy and prioritized, and then something can trigger and we haven't even given ourselves the space to actually feel what's underneath that before we make a decision, before we take action. And it's okay. Ultimately, the big cosmic joke is we can't get it wrong. Like, you can't get it wrong in life. Any route that you take is going to lead you back to love. However, by doing this and maybe speaking your truth more and connecting to nature and giving yourself the space and stillness before you react could prevent you from going down a different path for 5, 10, 15, 30 years,
That's right. And I as a share too, I agree with what you're saying. And I've experienced that myself with my current partner, but we separated. We were long distance and we separated a couple of years ago, and it was the right thing to do at the time. And I remember I had very clear audience at that time. And I was like, is he the man for me? And the answer was yes. And I said, well, why are we doing this? And then it was like, let him go. It was like, yes, but let him go. And so I followed through with this, this breakup that was unbelievably painful. And equally in that time we were apart, which was really about 7 to 10 months. I can't remember, something like that. He went through a massive sort of up-leveling in his spiritual awakening and his humility. And at the same time, I went into a really short, sharp, but very painful relationship for me that taught me things that I had never learned in previous relationships. Because in previous relationships, I just hadn't experienced the energy that was hidden in that relationship. It looked a certain way, felt a certain way, but wasn't that. And it happened very quickly. And I came out of that spun. I came out of that numb, protectively numb. And then my partner now, Andreas, kind of kept knocking at the door, and he wanted to come back, and he was like, I feel really strongly that we're meant to be together. I was so numb, and part of me was like, but I just did as you said. I just expressed my truth. I said, I'm really numb, and I don't know if that means I don't love you. I don't know. I'm telling you, I feel nothing. Like, it's not like I feel anything towards anyone else. I'm just numb. And he just held space. And he just held space, and he stayed. And that's actually one of my most favorite things about him. And there's lots of things that fucking annoy me about that man too. But my favorite thing about him is his steel energy of holding. Like, he's like a rock, sometimes too rock for me. I'm crazy and chaotic, and it's like, flex with me. But when I need him to be, he's like a solid rudder. And that was the same thing. I didn't want to tell him that I was numb, because maybe, he would leave. And, there were times where he's like, I don't know if I can wait forever. When are you going to come out of this? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I won't. But just expressing that truth, as hard as it was, did bring us into, as you said, more connection, because that is what truth does. That is exactly what truth does. Yes. Relationships, sex, and around sex and pleasure. For the women listening, particularly, because I think that we have more conditioning perhaps, and it's not about who suffered more, but we know historically sex has not always been a liberating experience for women, and that historically, we've been traded or offered or felt obliged. And so I feel that there is a calling right now for women to re-educate themselves into a liberated state around their bodies and their pleasure. And I agree with you on that. So for the women listening who maybe are like, I'm numb in my body, or I don't feel, I do it out of obligation. I mean, I have these chats a lot with clients, and I know this is a very real reality, and I'm sure it's a very real reality for a lot of women. What would be your advice, your tips for women to begin to find more pleasure in intimacy with another? Is it finding it with themselves first? Like, what would just it doesn't have to be the process, but just what you found works for you when you feel that I don't want to, but really on a soul level, we do want to be seen, loved, and held, and pleasure is available to all of us. So yeah, just love to hear your thoughts on that, Abby. I know that wasn't a very clear question, but I think you get the energy of what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, thank you, babe. And I just really honor your share there around your relationship, and just really felt, yeah, just your vulnerability and your heart. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, when it comes to pleasure, I mean, I feel when you're talking about it, I feel the sadness in me. I want to cry. And I had this experience a few weeks ago with a woman. Yeah, and she just came up to me and just shared so many things around her current relationship and her partner. And I'm going to leave her name out of this, but they hadn't connected intimately for a couple of years, and she'd never had an orgasm, and she felt numb, and there's a lot of pain in her body. And this isn't uncommon. This is not uncommon. This is actually more common than not. And I honestly believe that the thing that is creating, pain or any sort of biological discomfort in our system is because we're not allowing our life force in. We're not allowing ourselves to feel pleasure. And as a woman, that is one of our superpowers. Like, the more that we open to that energy, the more radiance exuberates from ourselves, the more turned on by life we feel, the more our heart activates, and we feel empathy and compassion and grace. And so, for women that are just starting this journey, it's take it slow. Take it slow, take it piece by piece. I know for me, when I first came together with Jared, there was like this, I wanted to rush it, and I wanted to just like be everything now and be the orgasmic multi-dimensional creatrix that is there. But I know for women's bodies, like, we need to take it slow. We need to slow down. We need to be really gentle with ourselves. And it's first reconnecting with our own body, and for me, doing that is a practice regularly, self-touch, actually putting on some beautiful music, lighting a candle, having some incense or essential oils going, and literally just connecting with my body. And that could be placing a hand on your heart, placing a hand on your womb, and just starting to breathe gently and connect to your body. And a practice that I love is breast massage. And I mean, that in itself is such a powerful and easy ritual to do for women, is get some oil, get some rose oil, and start to just massage and gently love and touch your breast and reconnect to your breast. Because how many women, myself included, in the past, just I don't like their breasts or disconnect from their breasts, or don't give them any love and attention. But this is the gateway to the heart. Our breasts are the gateway to our hearts, and the more that we can connect with them, even in the shower, even just gentle touch, just starting to massage around the lymphatic system in the breasts, the more that our heart starts to open. And when our heart opens, our yoni opens, and that's the portal. Like, the gateway is through the heart. So for women, anything that's going to support them to feel more in their heart, self-touch, breast massage rituals. Cacao for me has been a powerful resource, and maybe you can pop this in the show notes. I don't know if you've spoken about cacao before, but cacao is an ancient medicine. It's a chocolate, but it's very sacred, and it's a gateway to the heart. So I have cacao rituals most days. When I feel myself getting in my head, or when I want to come back to my pleasure, I want to come into creativity, I'll have a cup of cacao. And it's a very ceremonial experience for us women to allow us to connect to our heart, and then also our pleasure. So that's when things will start to slowly but surely come back online, and you'll start to feel more sensations in your whole body and in your yoni. Yeah.
I love your advice, because I know through my own training in this space, the really the foundational element for women to access pleasure is safety. We need to feel safe to feel pleasure, and what you're suggesting there is really such critical elements of safety. Is, can I take it slow enough that my system doesn't resist, and can I be safe by myself? Because bringing in an extra person, if we can't feel safe by ourselves to touch ourselves, then it doesn't make logical sense that we would suddenly feel safe to have someone else do that. So I think they're really good tips. And if you're listening and you're like, something popped to mind that someone might be like, well, fuck, Marina, how am I going to have time to put on sexy music and rub my breast for 20 minutes when I don't have time to do a workout? Do this instead. I feel like we need to, as women, prioritize, as you've so beautifully said, and so you so beautifully embody, Abby, slowing down. And this has taken me a lifetime of learning, because I am a hummingbird, and I like to go fast and I like to be everywhere at once. But grace has come to me most often when I slow. And so as someone very much still a student in that space, I encourage you to take that advice, and even if it's 20 minutes, lock the door, turn on the music, switch off your mind, and just touch your body. And you notice that Abby didn't say, masturbate. That's not what she's saying. So when people are talking about self-pleasure or self-touch, it's literally just it's being in your senses. That's where your pleasure is. So we so often in this age, right, tend to go to like porn and penetration, and I don't know, but as a woman, I can for sure say that one of the quickest ways actually to shut me down is when a man goes immediately to my yoni as the first touch point. I'm immediately like, what about, and there's a great saying that men should remember, that whatever part of a woman they want turned on, they should touch. So yeah, like touch, tickles for me is very big. I don't know if you like that, Abby, but just tickling my own skin. I love it. So women, I think that's great advice. And as we start to wrap up, Abs, I just wanted to ask you a couple of quick fire questions. One is, what would be your go-to advice for anyone today or any day that they're listening to this to access more energy? Like, what's your go-to to activate more energy?
Dance.
Yes.
Dance. I love dancing. And you know, it used to be go to the gym. It used to be like move my body with weights or whatever. But now, because I'm focusing more on cultivating like more of my feminine essence, I think for any woman that is listening, I believe that dance and movement in a non-linear fashion, like just moving however you want to move, and whatever kind of music erupts your energy, gets your blood pumping, gets your heart racing. I think that's the best way to activate energy.
Love it. And what would be your advice to activate and elevate a sense of empowerment? So if any day you're just feeling not, you know, not loving yourself, or not feeling yourself, or not feeling like you're special or magical or magnificent, what would be your kind of go-to to feel that sense of empowerment?
Yeah, well, again, music for me is a really powerful tool. So again, dance, it always helps me to bring my energy back online, and just in looking at myself in the mirror. So there's a practice I do often, and just speaking God into my soul. It's just like, you are a magnificent woman. You are the creatrix. You are a perfect child of God. You are a woman on fire. You are, or just all reaffirming to myself who the fuck I am, because we can all get lost. And, you know, even this morning, I had a moment where some rage was coming up. I was feeling a bit funky. And then I went into the mirror. I put on Alicia Keys' This Girl Is on Fire. And I sang that. And then I did my affirmations. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm back. I'm good. I'm feeling empowered.
And you know, I love that. And it always, every time anyone ever says, you know, mirror work, I always think about that little blonde girl that I'm sure you've seen from online, when she's like, I love my hair and I love my house. And she's sort of wide legs pointing at the mirror with this energy. It's so awesome. And I think what I love about that, and the way that affirmations are powerful, is the remembrance that it's just a thought that takes hold, right? That either spirals us down or up. And we have the capacity, we're brainwashed anyway, like by life, by the world, by society. So take that power back by brainwashing yourself with what makes you fucking feel good. Like even if you don't believe any of the woo, and you don't believe any of that we're more than just our skin suit, just do it and notice the difference in how you feel. And if that alone is not enough, you know, of a reason, then I don't know what would be, right? Like, just, you have that capacity. I love that. I can see you doing that. It makes some sense. Now, what about for, say someone is feeling, or they want to elevate their expression in the world. So they're feeling like, I want to be my truth in the world. And yet I don't feel like talking on social media. I don't know how to get it out. I feel small when I want to feel big. Like, what would you do to elevate your sense of expression?
Unlock your voice. Like, actually work on your throat chakra. And I think for a lot of women, again, this is a big journey, and it's also connected to your pleasure. It's also connected to your yoni. It's also connected to your heart, and your ability to be that full expression in the world is actually practicing using your voice. So for me, another thing I do is I will tone. I'll make sound through my throat. So in the morning, if I'm feeling a bit funky, like I'll put on the dancing music, and then I'll just make tones or hums, literally like just using my voice. And at first it was really uncomfortable, because I was like, this is bullshit, like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't like it. However, it's helped now that I'm doing it more and more, and I'm just toning and sounding, that is having an impact in how I communicate with people, my safety of actually like expressing in the world when I'm making love, and actually making more noise and opening up my throat chakra. So yeah, I mean, the throat is the key to so much liberation for women.
I agree. Such great advice. All right. And now, as a final question, if the rest of this podcast got deleted, it's not going to, but let's say it did. And like literally all people got to hear was this one last phrase from you. So it's kind of like a message in a bottle or a billboard kind of sentence, but it's like, yo team, really, what's really important is this: what I've learned to be true, what I believe, that I'd love to share with you as the wisdom from my soul to yours is, what does it all boil down to, Ads?
Being in the truth of your emotional experience in every single moment. Feeling your emotions.
Yeah.
That sets you free.
Mm.
Not getting caught in them, feeling them, transmuting them.
Mm.
Your emotions are the key.
Mm. I love that. I love that so much. This has been such a juicy conversation. I know I could talk for hours about some of the things we only just tapped on, but we will absolutely link to everything. And if everyone's not following you, they absolutely should be doing that, of course. Abby, is there anything else you wanted to share, or did we kind of do what we needed to do today?
Yeah, I feel as you've shared, there's so many places I want to go, and there is so much like depth to me, and I really appreciate how you've weaved this conversation and brought back like the simplicity and the actionables and the practical things for those of you that are listening, because I do have a tendency to like float up into the fairyland. So I appreciate that. But yeah, for anyone that wants more aliveness in their life and wants to access more of their multidimensional self and reclaim their pleasure as a woman, then just come and tune into my podcast, because that's where I have these really deep, juicy conversations. And my intention is that they activate aliveness. That is literally the essence of every conversation. So we'd love to have you over there.
Yes. Okay. And we'll link to that too. Abby, thank you for all of you, all of the bits and the pieces that you bring to the world, who you be in the world, but mostly that you continue to chase your wholeness in a way that gives permission to do it. I know that so many people look to you as an inspiration in the way that you, at the beginning of this conversation, said you looked and went, who's got the life that I want? I know so many women are looking at you and going, Abby, I want that kind of love. I want that kind of freedom. I want that kind of expression. I want that kind of pleasure. So thank you for being that for so many people. And thank you for joining us today and all your wisdom. Yeah, big loves, Beauty.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Absolute pleasure.